First of all, again, one of the things that I like to stress is that we had a really nice team out here last year. Katie was the supervisor. We had a fellow by the name of Dan Rice, who was the senior, and Jess, who was, I think, in her second year as an auditor for our firm. And they were the team that actually did all the work, and I sit here and tell you about it. The job kind of we break it up into two sections. What we do is we can't do everything at year end, because if we did, we'd be overwhelmed, as would your staff. So we try to come in the spring, and then we do something later in the early summer. So in April, we came in, which we call our preliminary work, and what that does is we look at a lot of things that aren't date sensitive to June 30th, the budget, debt, OPEB. We have to do test of transactions, both in the revenue cycle, the expenditure cycle, the payroll cycle. We do a lot of what we call that prelim work, and we're able to get and the single audit, which is usually a special education that we look at, and we try to get all that done in that time period, and that was done in April. We came in for year-end work in the middle of August 15th. Just to note, that's a good timing for us, but it also signifies that the books were closed very timely, because in order for us to be there on August 15th, we have to receive the files, the closed books of the town about a week before that to prep our trial balance software and to get ready to actually do the financial statements. So I just want to note that I think that's kind of important. And also, we pretty much have had this time period set aside for Milton year after year after year, because Amy is able to get that to us. And at that time, we actually start beginning what I call walking down the balance sheet. We look at cash, receivables, capital assets. We look at warrants payable. We look at compensated absences. We look at various accruals, interest accruals, and we basically, to the lack of a better word, beat the heck out of the balance sheet. It's called substantive testing. During that time period, we also do analytics. Things that we expect to see happen, we determine, did they happen? If there were variances between our expectations and actuals, we analyze them, ask questions, satisfy ourselves from an audit standpoint. All that was done in about a 2-week time frame. And I'd say to you that each year we've come in, we work with checklists, we give people a heads up that we're coming in. For the most part, as your auditor and also as a businessman, I was very happy with the way the process went. We get timely responses to our answers. The answers are accurate. We kind of judge how things are going by our ability to receive answers in a timely basis. Like if you have to wait a few days, that's not good. If you have to wait a few hours, that's terrific. And that's probably primarily what would happen. So we did all that and finished up by the end of August and had drafts to be looked at and analyzed by Amy near the middle to late part of September. So I was very happy with the way the time schedule went. FY16 items to note in the financial statements. The two biggest items you have on your balance sheet, let's say 3, that are liabilities, are the GASB 68 accrual, which is your net pension liability, your GASB 45, which is the OPEB liability, and also your long-term debt. Net pension liability was $33 million. The unfunded GASB 45 liability was $51.9 million, and your long-term debt was $41.2 million. And that's pretty much what's worth talking about on the debt side of the equation. On the asset side, your cash and investments, you had $45 million in general government, $109 million of retirement, and I'm happy to say you also have an OPEB trust, which at the end of last year had $533,000 in it. We all know that's probably it's somewhat insignificant in comparison to the total liability, but the fact that you have it, I think, is important. And the fact that you put another $147,000, $148,000 into it in FY16 means you're not hiding from the fact that this liability is real, and you have somewhat of a plan to get there, both short-term and long-term. Capital asset activity was, I would say, fairly significant in 2016. You added almost $11 million worth of capital assets. The big thing was the storage tank, $5.2 million. The enterprise put a lot of infrastructure into $1.6 million, and DPW did a lot of infrastructure in terms of road repairs and infrastructure of almost $2 million. Throwing in some equipment, some police vehicles, some financial software, and also the cemetery garage construction, that was probably another $1.3, $1.4 million. So that's what happened from that standpoint. when you look at your actual, let's say, performance, the real thing that we measure by, and you should measure yourself by, is the general fund budget to actual schedule. This is a schedule that's kind of in the back of the report. It's actually RSI because it's called a schedule, not a statement. And you say to yourself, how did I do? What it does is shows the budget for revenues and the actual collections. It shows the appropriations that you budgeted and the actual expenditures. Overall, your general fund decreased by just under $500,000 in FY16. The good thing about that is, I would say, significantly better than you expected. You had planned to use about $2.3 million worth of free cash in FY16 to balance your budget. What you ended up using was about 1.1 because receipts came in $1.6 million higher than you expected. Motor vehicle excise and departmental revenues were the contributors to that. And your appropriation turnbacks were $638,000. Just to put that turnback in perspective too, that's less than 1%. So that means your budget was better than 99% accurate. But still, when you think about the fact that you were going to spend the money, and also, and I like the way you conservatively estimate revenues, you didn't have to use as much free cash as you anticipated, and that's the good thing. A little bit of a negative related to that is the fact that obviously is because you did use some free cash, your unreserved or unassigned fund balance went down. And it went down by about $658,000 in total. That's better than occurred in 15, and at the end of the year, you had a $7.3 million balance in this fund. Now, we kind of look at this thing over the course of time. In FY15, you had a 9%, fund balance was 9% of appropriations. In FY14, it was 11%. At the end of FY16, it was 8%. Now, 8% is still a decent number by most standards, even when you look at your peers as well as what the GFOA thinks. But you can see there's a little bit of a trend here, that because the use of free cash erodes your fund balance. Included in that is your stab funds also. Those total, I think, I was going to say about $2 million. No, $3.2 million. You have a general stab and a capital stab, and that gets included in your unassigned fund balance, according to GAAP. Enterprise funds did pretty much the same as they did in FY15. The water posted a gain of $960,000. Last year was 15 was 1.0 million, which is, and it's been about the same for the last 4 years. And the same thing with the sewer. You had a profit of $570,000. That is comparable to the $813,000 profit in 15. The deal with the enterprise funds is you want to show a profit because they have to pay for their own debt service, and debt service, the principal portion is not considered to be an expense. So these profits actually go towards meeting those obligations for your total debt service. The retirement system broke even, which is pretty consistent with all the retirement systems we've seen around. $225,000. But the good thing is, even though the percentage of funding is down, you're still at 77% funding, which is about 20% to 30% more than a lot of the other retirement systems we see out there. I think the market, some of the money-weighted rate of returns have been like 0.4% that we saw for a lot of the retirement systems that we audited this year. And like I mentioned, the OPEB trust has $432,000 in it. Incrementally, you added $147,000 to that in FY16. So from an audit standpoint, with all the pages in there, what you end up with is we own 2 pages of it. We own the opinion. You had an unqualified opinion, or an unmodified opinion, I should say, which is the best the town can get. I'm telling you that the reporting deadlines that we put for ourselves, as well as the town puts on us, were met. The information we received was accurate. The responses to our audit inquiries were timely. There were no adjustments that we recommended be posted to the ledger as a result of our audit procedures, which means any information you were receiving during the year in FY16 was accurate and didn't require any adjustments whatsoever. And I'm happy to report that we didn't discover or want to report any serious internal control issues. So being in the business of negative assurance, that means you did all right. The federal awards report, this has changed a little bit. You have to get it because you spend more than $750,000 a year. You spent $2.2 million in each year, the special education cluster, which is a group of programs to meet the special education criteria. We tested that. That was about $1.3 million of the 2.2. Our test results had no findings and no question cost. I'm not asking that you look at the report, but if you did, there were some changes this year to that report that weren't in FY15. The term A133 was thrown out. Uniform guidance is the new term that's in. The report format changed significantly, and some of the wording in the opinion as a result of uniform guidance changed. The work was essentially the same, it's just the way it's reported now is what changed relative to that, in case anybody needed to know. Then there's the management letter. This is the thing we own 100%. This is something that we try to convey to you or provide you, which is, I call it in the form of constructive criticism. It doesn't point out anything that's good, because that's not what the point of the letter is about. But what we do is we try to revisit the comments of the prior year, give you a status on those, and then offer anything else that we think is worth offering for the current year. In the prior year's comments, we had a significant deficiency, and that was a result, I think you know, of that account that had, it was a manual checking account that I was very uncomfortable with. That was shut down. There were 9 other comments also involved. 7 of those were resolved. We had 2, the centralization of the procurement process, and also the payroll and vendor account reconciliation that weren't sufficiently resolved or needed to continue to be looked at from a resolution standpoint. I would say to you that the priority of those 2 remainers would be the payroll and vendor account reconciliation. I feel very strongly about it. And you can see in the comment that it still isn't there yet. There's elements or processes that are attempting to be put into place to get it to where it needs to be. I'm not quite sure it's got there yet, but the goal is that it will be done.
Rich, one question on the reconciliation of payroll and vendor accounts. The comment was it wasn't reconciled to the treasurer's cash book. Was it reconciled to the general ledger cash book?
Let me stop for a second. We were able to satisfy ourselves from an audit standpoint.
The cash was fairly stable.
The cash was okay. But the processes in place that even though we were able to do it because of our audit work, there were some errors during the year that weren't caught on a timely basis.
Yeah, I saw that,
And those errors, I would consider them to be significant. So the idea of the fact that we are okay at June 30th is a plus for the financial statements, as a plus as your auditor that I can opine on this, but it wasn't good from an overall internal control framework.
I understand. I guess the question I was asking, because I mean, you see some, especially when you're dealing with small business clients, you know, they'll reconcile to general ledger, but they'll forget all about the cash book. You know.
The way the process works here is the treasurer, and you use Zobrio, which is kind of entwined with the general ledger, but technically the treasurer is supposed to say, I've reconciled, call it the cash book, to the bank statement. And then the cash book is supposed to be reconciled to the general ledger.
Right.
And what we found is on the bank statement, the bank was providing information that had nothing to do with the town. They actually had some outstanding checks that belonged to somebody else. And that little process should have flags to say, what's the issue, and let's resolve this at a timely basis. So I guess I'm here before you saying I'm not comfortable that comment was fully resolved.
Okay.
That was one that the audit committee did spend a little time on, and so clearly it wasn't working at the end of fiscal year 15, wasn't working at the end of fiscal year 16. We did try and say, okay, is it fixed now, so we can come to the Board of Selectmen and say it's fixed, and I think it is not, it's still a work in process, so I think it's something. I talked to the treasurer and said, perhaps I think he probably needs to speak with you and some collaboration with the town accountant to say, what is the reconciliation that really needs to get done in order to catch that,
right.
Or if there's other things in the interim since year end that have happened that just it would bubble issues up that you'd be able to identify it. So, and I think that's the one that when I went to town meeting last spring, we have discussions with the treasurer, we thought it was resolved, and it turns out it's not at year end and it continues to not be. So I think that's one we'll want to make sure is fixed. Otherwise, all of the management letter comments, the tentative conclusions from last spring resolved the way we thought they were going
That's
to.
correct. And the last comment was a new comment we added. There's an old comment there that's, we call it the informational comment, just to keep you aware that the OPEB, GASB 74 and 75 are coming down the road, which, similar to what the net pension liability did in GASB 68, is going to blow a bigger hole in your balance sheet.
I guess the big difference there too is, at least GASB 68 theoretically is getting smaller,
You can't say that.
but the other
for
one's
OPEB.
getting bigger.
That's right, and the best thing about GASB 68, even though it's getting smaller, is because MGL says you have to fund this thing
Right.
by a certain time frame,
Exactly.
2040. There's no such parameters relative to OPEB.
Right.
And there's also, for lack of a better word, the net pension liability is easier to identify and define because salaries are they're structured. You know what the salaries are going to be. You have an idea what the inflationary rate is going to be for a medical cost, which is very, it's very difficult to tell. So there's a lot of open ends on the OPEB side versus they're not as open on the NPL side, net pension liability side.
Sure.
And then the last comment, very wordy, but it relates to federal grants. And the idea behind it is, like I said earlier, when we tested your federal grants, we thought your internal controls were fine, your reporting was fine to the federal agencies that had to be reported to, and your compliance with the laws and regulations and also with the compliance supplement were okay. Uniform guidance said, that's all fine, but we want it documented. And they actually adopted the COSO, or Committee for Sponsoring Organizations of the Treadway Commission. I have to read that to say it, that you adopt those standards in designing or documenting your internal controls. And I'm not sure if there's a federal agency that's going to come and say, show me that document, but you have to know that they could. And if they could, technically, they could threaten to withhold funding. So that's why that comment is in there. So this little 10-minute discussion is talked about the 3 reports we added. There's also another report that we issued. It's called the 805 report, and that allows us to actually report the net pension liability in your financial statements. That's mostly dealing directly with the retirement system, and it's not part of the overall audit, but is a necessary element in order for us to conclude the audit. And I don't know if that report was in your package.
It
but-
was, yes.
Okay, good. So that's the other report. I didn't really talk a lot about it, but basically what it is your actuary takes information and he puts together the net pension liability as a result of the information they get. Our job is to test or vet the information the actuary is using so that we can be assured that the information at least he's getting to come up with his conclusions have been audited, because what GASB 68 did for the auditor, and previously we just showed it in the back, we had this unfunded liability, it was in the notes, but nothing was on the face of the financial statements. The minute GASB 68 came out, all of a sudden it became part of my opinion. And I needed an 805 report in order to opine on the financial statements. Any questions?
Any questions from, well, actually, I know Kathy wanted to address the process, or your,
No, I think my one comment really was on the management letter comments and how those, were resolved as we anticipated they were going to be. So it was good to get confirmation of that. And the one that is still open, I think we can get a game plan, hopefully to speak with the treasurer to get that resolved. So it's not open at this year end.
that would be good, huh?
And I guess in terms of the comment on the COSO, which, granted, it's written here only to apply to federal funds, but it really applies town-wide.
Technically, it does. I don't disagree with that one bit. And I would say, for the most part, it's very difficult, and I'm going to say for all municipalities, because nobody really has the resources to come up with a solid document like the private sector might have, or a publicly traded company. But for the most part, you have the controls in place. They reside with the role that the person plays, the checks and balances that a municipal entity does have by itself, just from, like, you take the treasurer, you take the accountant, you take the reconciliation process with the collectors and receivables. So there's a lot of elements that are in fact in place. They're just not
On the
documented.
procedural side, I guess the environment side is always the tougher side.
Yep.
Because it's more esoteric.
Yep.
And starts from the top, and it's really a
And-
tone more
Well,
than.
actually, I was just going to say that the tone from the top here is fine. Because that's not that I could probably belittle a board, but I've seen the tone from the top not be where it needs to be. both from the Board of Selectmen or council to the auditor or the accountant. And when you don't have the tone at the top right, the rest of it's not going to make it. My observations have been such that that's never been a problem here in Milton.
Any questions or comments?
I don't.
I was just glad to
I
see
think
we
just-
had 7 of them resolved, and we're working on
Yes.
that. That was the good news.
This, overall, you're right, this was a good report.
Yes.
Yeah. I think the one other thing, just to inform the Board of Selectmen that the audit committee is working on, and I think you're probably aware of this, is that we're working on a request for proposal. It's been drafted by town council. And you're invited to propose. There's a limited pool of folks who actually can. And so that's been drafted by town council. The audit committee, had some comments on it, and I'll be catching up with our town administrator on Friday just to run through it.
Great.
Any comments there.
And I assume that the audit committee will kind of not take charge of drafting the COSO, but kind of oversee the process of it being done.
I will tell you this, I know MASBO has been having seminars for a period of time relative to this new uniform guidance. So, and since it is really relative to the school, there should be somebody there that can take charge of that.
Yeah.
That's where I look for that information to be coming from.
Sure, yeah. I wouldn't expect the audit committee to draft it, but to just kind of make sure it is kind of,
Something getting resolved.
yes.
Okay. Very good.
Is there any?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Wonderful job, Rich.
Thank you very much.
I know you and the staff work really hard.
We like this job, there's a lot of work that gets done in a short period of time, but it's a good job.
Great.
Yep.
Yeah,
Thank
glad you hear that the process went well, too, with the timely responses you got from the town's end, so that's good for news for town
They have a
management.
sense of urgency to get us out too, I think. So,
And I think we should thank Amy Dexter, too.
We should thank Amy Dexter and everyone
Really the one
involved. and they-
responsible for getting all this stuff pulled
Yes.
together, so it's
pretty much our
you do
go-to
your
person.
job.
Can I say one thing?
But please come up to the microphone, Amy, because you won't be heard in TV land if you don't.
Okay, no, so thank you for thanking me, but I just want to thank my staff, Lisa Cool, Nancy Bolger, Eileen Doyle, and the staff at the schools, Lisa McDonough, Glenn, and Barbara and Gail.
Great, thank you,
Thank
the whole
you.
team. Kathy, is there anything you or Jay wanted to add?
No, I have nothing additional. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all very much.
thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Same to you, thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Our Consolidated Facilities Director just arrived, and he's next on the agenda. So, Richie.
Hi, Bill. Good evening. How you doing?
Very good. How you doing?
Good.
For periodic report, Bill.
Yes, I guess, I wasn't sure too if you're already doing the budget too. I know you told me maybe you might want to discuss the budget, but we can do the quality report and then the budget, if that's, Yeah. I actually just signed it yesterday. It was going back and forth, So, and I passed out a copy, everybody, the quality report. So basically, I just kind of skimmed through it with a lot of information here, but, obviously, the current budget's on track. I submitted my 18 budget, and that, we can talk about that tonight. I do the 5-year capital planning for both the schools and for the town, and we do have a 5-year plan in place, and, and I'm also on the capital committee, so that kind of goes through the process, how much funding we have, and we pick the most highest priorities for that. The next little line of capital projects that we did over the year, this past year, we received $637,000. The Glover School, we did a new security system. That was the project amount, and that job was completed. The elementary schools, we did some more additional upgrades to the security system, a $230,000 project that was all completed. We did some new roadways in the back of the Copeland Field House, about $90,000 project that was completed. And currently, we're doing $170,000 boiler job, heating and ventilation upgrades at the police station department, and that's ongoing. That's been going on for about 2 months now. I'm hoping within the next 2 or 3 weeks should be 100% completed. We borrowed $140,000 from the capital committee. I'm taking $10,000 from my budget and also from the police department budget, and we received about $25,000 in grants. And we should save about maybe $9,000 a year with energy upgrades. So that's a heating system that really needed it. And then, that was just all the details down below. And then, for the future projects, we have about a $15,000 paving project in front of the headquarters that we'll put off to the spring. In CO, count of age, and we have some kitchen equipment that we're gonna put off until the spring. And then the DPW brake run, that's been an ongoing project for the last 6 months, and I got involved on the capital committee that they never priced out the roofing system. So I went out, working with Joe, we had to get another price to do the roofing system over. About $80,000 was the low bid, and that really wasn't budgeted in the plan. So I went out and brought a roofing company in, so we did some scanning on the roof. The roof's in great shape, so we actually applied a high-tech coating. So we saved about, we did that for $25,000, saved about $60,000 in process, and we got a 20-year warranty on that.
Great.
So high-tech coatings, it's not too commonly used around here, but a lot of the bigger, the hospitals, the universities, when they're working 14 stories up, it's pretty hard to strip a roof and throw it on the ground. So a lot of high-tech coatings are done in those applications, so. So it seems to be a pretty good project. I get some great references every bill. It's the way to go if your roof's not wet. So that's what we did there. And then, staffing updates. I mean, I won't go through all these little details, but it could take a lot. But the next big thing was the staffing updates, and I went to the personnel board last year, and we tried to get a W-3 to work with a licensed electrician and my heating person. That was approved, but there was no funding. And this year, we went back again for the licensed trade person. That's one more craft that they need in this department, is like a master carpenter, craftsman that can work with the staff that's not licensed, pull permits, do project management for me. I think that really is gonna kind of make the department whole. Well, that would be, so we'd have a craftsman for carpentry and construction and project management. We have a licensed electrician, a lighting, and a licensed heating and ventilation technician. And then from there, we just kind of branch it. But I think that will be, enough staff for the next few years that I see, so.
That's great, Bill, and that's something that we supported you in last year, and I'm glad the Personnel Board decided to approve this position, because over the long run, it should save us
Right.
money, rather than having to go out and contract out a lot of that type of work. So that's great news.
Yeah, the biggest discussion to have the personnel board is they were trying to really, talk about a tit for tat. And it's like, well, how much are you going to save if you spend $70,000 for a position? How much would you save in a position like this? It's kind of really hard to define that, but I look at it's a long-term savings, because without that position, you defer a lot of maintenance. Things that we can't do in-house, we're either subcontracting out.
You just don't do it.
Or we just don't do it.
Right.
So if you can do some of the projects in-house over the years, you can save enormous amount of money. And that's what it is. It's having a good preventive maintenance plan in place, so. And, obviously, the town solar array project, we finished that over the summer. It's about a 36 kW, 128 panels. So over the next, 25 years, looking at the return on investment, and actually this was a sheriff's funded job, we should get back about $300,000 in energy savings and about another $90,000 in the excess credits. So that's good news. I mean, and they had panels there about 5 years ago, but the panels today are so much more efficient than they were 5 years ago. The technology's changing. Actually, they're doing, the technology's so good, they say the next 5 years, when you put a roof on your house, the roofing systems will have solar panels already in the roofing shingles. So that's the next technology that's coming out. So they're really advancing, so. Yeah, I'm not sure what the cost will be, but it'd be very interesting to put, that technology. And, the next big thing would probably be green communities. We've been a green communities for 6 years now. And over the last 2 years, we've got a few grants. I'm applying for some more grants this year. And it's a tough project. Every year you have to go back, and for the annual report, there's a lot of reporting, getting all the data, the vehicle usage, how much utility. So it takes about 40 to 60 hours just to put that report back in place. But in order to do that, you have to do that in order to apply for all the grant money. If you don't do the report, you can't fund, and that, the grant money is about $230,000 a year. And I'm going for that type of grant this year, and another $100,000 in energy credits, if I can get them, so.
Good.
But it's very competitive. It's, it's all the towns competing against that money. Our work order system that we started 3.5 years ago, obviously, as of a few weeks ago, we had 8,100 work orders completed. We're about 240 backlogged right now. Every day, day like today, we had 15 heating calls. It's just, it gets backlogged pretty quick,
But considering the number of work orders, 230 is not a bad backlog, really.
No, it's not too bad, yeah, it's, but some of those 230 hours, they could be projects that could take, 15 to 20 hours, so it's,
Yeah.
it's just a number, we just try to track it. But it's really proven to be a critical point to really do some planning, and so we can check out all the vendors who've been here and how many hours we spend at every building. It's a nice tool. The Milton Arts Center, the big project this year that they had an old oil tank that's been in the ground since 1997. I don't like oil tanks in the ground if I can help it. My last job, I took out about 100 of them, so this was always been bothering me because, it's kind of just sits there, and when you're plowing the back roadway, people go over that area. So this was the year to do it. I actually got the gas company to bring the gas into the town for free, which didn't cost us anything there. And the boiler was in good shape, so we did a conversion burner in there that converted from, oil to gas, so we saved money there. And we got the tank out of the ground, and I think I had budgeted before, it was about a $20,000 project. I was going to just sub out the whole job. I ended up being a general contractor myself, so we did it with the DPW, doing a lot of the digging, so we did for $5,000. So we took a tank out that's, roughly 20-something years old. We had a little spill that was contained, that was all engineered, taken out, so I got out of there for $5,000. That was,
Is that the last underground tank we have?
well, other than the DPW yard,
Yeah.
there's some tanks like that,
Right.
but, yeah, but,
Otherwise, no.
and it's strictly just, and then, it's nice to have all the buildings go to natural gas, it's more efficient, there's less wear and tear. Working with the DPW, obviously, in the winter, we'll keep our fingers crossed. I love a snowstorm that comes and goes the next day, but I'm sure that's not gonna be the norm, but, it was a nice kind of breaking in the season, kind of test the waters.
We were in discussion on Saturday, Bill, I'm
Yeah.
going to get you on that precision weather
Yeah.
email, yourself and Bob Mayhew, so that
Yeah.
you can get the weather in real time with
Yeah, the
with
updates,
DPW
yeah.
guys, yeah.
But I work very closely with Joe and
Yep.
Tom over there, and they pretty much tell us what we do. So we do a lot of things in-house, and they help us out. And, we get some money, last year on the Copeland grant, they helped me buy a new truck for the department and a Kubota for the schools, and we did some work over here with I think it's the World War I monument, not too, I made a mistake there, and did some work here on the front walkway. So all the projects completed. And then just the list is, just all the one-time money projects that we completed over the last year. I won't go through all the details, but, the Warren Committee, when I go there, they're very generous to give me that one-time money. And I know we talked about many times that I really need a line item in the budget to do above, because I identified like another $240,000 projects that I'd like to do that are, a little under 10,000. And, obviously with the capital, we may change some of the thresholds, so like, the basic threshold might raise to 25,000. It's 10,000, it's really, that's small money today. Maybe 15, 20 years ago was a lot of money, but 10,000 today doesn't go too far, so. And I kind of list them out, and this would be a good start for me when I go back to Warren Committee. They always want to know what I did and where's the money being spent in the future, so. And they're all good projects, and again, it's all a preventive maintenance plan moving forward. If you had a chance to look at them, if you have any, questions, and then,
That's great, though.
yeah, and then lastly, I always think, we do have some volunteers, landscapers that really help us out here with, they help maintain the grounds of the schools, and Driscoll Landscaping, the Amateur Garden Club, Malloy Landscaping, Coastal Landscaping, And I always tell people, I always thank the people in my department. They are the engine behind me. I get to ride the plane, but, you know, and manage it, but the hard work for this, we have a small department. We're in 24 buildings in and out, hundreds of heating calls every day, cutting grass, running to a heating call. So these guys, the men and women in my department, to be really are making this department what it is today, and I hope we can continue to grow it, and get the right people in there so we can, have a real good department. And I think every town needs this type of department. Because maintenance is so costly, and if you put it off, it costs a lot of money down the line, as we all know. So, but, the men and women in my department, they're the backbone of this department, and always, they don't get the recognition that I'm always publicly out there, and, and people thank me, but it's my staff too, so I think that's important,
They do a good job.
And like I said, that's the one thing we became so aware of when the Consolidated Facilities Department was formed. We thought we were going to be able to go in and say, okay, well, let's take maintenance budgets from the various, the various town departments. And they all chuckled. What maintenance budget? We don't have a maintenance budget.
yeah.
That went away a long time ago.
Yeah.
So, so to your credit, you've been doing a lot of work with shoestrings of budgets to do it.
We do a lot with a little, but all the departments are good, and with the money I get from my budget, I try to, offset some of the resource budgets. The school department's very good, they've been, but having, when you get free labor, that's enormous.
Yep.
And it's a labor, it's a labor burden today, it costs a lot.
Just looking forward, Bill, major building components in schools, libraries, is still in good shape? Still?
Yeah, so actually what's good too, so about a year ago, the school department put aside roughly $70,000 for, we went out, back out to bid to do a feasibility study of all the school buildings and look at the major components. That report's almost done. I actually met with, in DRA, Drummy, Roseanne Anderson, they won the contract again. They went through all 6 schools again, and that's the bulk, obviously, I managed about 930,000 square feet, 680 on the schools. The scary part is that all the schools are built at the same time.
So they're all going to wear out at the
So when they start filling, they're all filling at the same time, so that's the scary part, but obviously you have a good maintenance plan, you try to prolong the inevitable, but it's always going to be a time of repair, but just speaking to the, before they did the report, trying to put the report together, they said for what we have for maintenance and the money we spend on capital, we're doing an unbelievable job. So they said the school's still in good shape, and I'm hoping that, if a boiler lasts 25 years, I'm hoping to get 30 years out of it. So you can kind of prolong it, and who knows what's really going to happen, obviously, and then we're also doing cost analysis, so if you have $5 million worth of heating equipment, what's the cost going to be in 20 years from now? Who really knows? Look at the technology, it just changes. Before a boiler would be as big as this one, now it's like a little box. Technology's really changing, but you do have to have a number. And unfortunately, you really can't plan for that. It'd be nice if you can set aside money every year, so in 20, but it's just not the, public sector and government, they just don't work, that's private industry, but that's going to be the issue. But you have to have a good maintenance department, and you have to, a capital budget to try to maintain those things, so. So that's really for the quarterly report. I think we're doing, fairly in decent shape.
Very good, thank you, Bill.
And then the budget, I don't know if are we talking about that tonight? They said that we were, that.
If you want to speak briefly to it?
Yeah, we kind of just got it, so it's, but
You want to just give a summary of it?
So obviously, we really go to the back, the contingent, non-contingent. The biggest jump in here that we're trying to get the 2 maintenance people, a maintenance man and a heating ventilation technician, so that would be the biggest jump in the budget. That will go up substantial, and then, the one-time money, every year we go back to the Warren Committee. We started out with 60 a few years ago, and last year we got a little bit more, so this year I'm going for 100. Looks like I can spend $100,000 easy every year, just in all those capital, those basic one-time money projects. And I just took, kind of looked at the snapshot, some of the things that I really needed, and I didn't go up too much. I'm holding my contracts pretty good. Custodial services, went from, 65,000 to 75. I really have to tweak it, some of the hours. I'm looking at the COA, and the hours that they may not be sufficient, so I might have to kind of boost it up a little bit in the library. We do a lot of special projects, like some major, go into a bathroom and really scrub it and wash the walls down and seal them. So I really didn't have that in the cleaning budget, so I wanted to put some money. But that's really the biggest items. It's not, I don't think, nothing really stands out. It's just, the staffing issues are the biggest.
Okay.
I know that work's appreciated, all the work you did on the floor over there at the Council on Aging. Mary Ann Sullivan said everyone really appreciated when they put the yoga mats down, and it looks great.
Yeah, no, that was a major difference. I mean, yeah. I'd like to do that maybe twice a year to try to maintain those buildings, but that building's getting a lot more use. It's amazing that the seniors are really, in public's really utilizing the
Yeah.
building for a night meeting, so. That's pretty much all I have. Any questions, or?
Any other comments or questions for Bill?
No, just I'm thoroughly impressed with your operation
Yeah.
in my month here. It's
Yeah.
really like jack of all trades, and I don't know if you know what the word no means,
Yeah.
you know?
That's a good point.
But,
That is a good
Yeah,
point.
no, so,
No, it's a passion. I've been, never want to give my age away, but it's been almost like 40 years now in construction. It's a long time, But no, it's fun. It's challenging, and they have a good staff, and, obviously I have to thank, all the committees that I'm on, and, and everybody supports it. It makes, it's a team effort, from the schools, or the police department. We're close with the fire department, everybody, everybody kind of gives and takes, so it works.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it, okay?
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you very much, Bill.
You're welcome, yep. Tom, see you in the morning.
Yeah, bright and early, 7:15.
That must be the Capital Committee.
It is capital, yes.
All right. The next item on our agenda is a discussion with our police chief about changing the speed limit, or the fundamental speed limit, from 30 to 25. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening.
So, Chief, I think, as you know, specifically the East Milton Neighborhood Association, but we understand from them on behalf of many neighborhood associations, there are a lot of people are interested in seeing the fundamental speed limit be reduced from 30 to 25. We had a brief discussion about it last week because it would require us to submit a warrant article, and the board wanted to get your thoughts on this.
Sure. I've also had, a ton of conversations with not just the East Milton Neighborhood Association. I spoke to Peter Dunn there, but I've spoke to really residents throughout town. I mean, there's enormous support. Obviously, I understand why. Some cities nearby have done it. They can do it quicker because of the city council versus us having to go to town meeting. So basically, that new law allows for two things. You can change the statutory speed limit in thickly settled areas down to 25, and then, designated areas 20, and it's just a matter of having a bylaw to adopt each provision, Section 17, Section 18. I have a couple concerns on it. It seems that where we have done traffic studies on, a lot of these side streets where this demand is, the speeds have averaged right around 30, and, I know that's fast on a side street, and it's too fast, so residents are understandably upset, but it's limited our ability to enforce that. So now if we change it to 25, my sense from talking to some of these groups, I think there's going to be an increased expectation on the police, which is fine. We accept that. I have a great staff. But, we have to have a realistic expectation, too. And, is an officer going to be on every side street writing a ticket for somebody going 28? One, there just isn't staffing for that. So, I have a concern about some of those impacts. If they are writing those tickets, it could increase overtime costs going to court. Is court going to take, 29 and a 25 speed ticket seriously? And, Quincy Court, which is the third busiest court in the state. I do have concerns. I'm concerned it can lead to increased complaints against police officers. People being stopped 3, 4, 5 miles over the speed limit. There can be allegations of profiling. There can be allegations of raising revenue for the town. I have concerns. That being said, they're not strong enough that I'm against it. I think, 30 is fast on pretty much any side street or residential neighborhood. I think, the residents, for legitimate reasons, want to reduce that. And I do think, if cars are currently going 33 and, in 30, it's maybe a little tough for us to be out ticketing all them. But if it's low to 25 and now you do ticket them, go to court, it's a little more reasonable because now they're 8 or 9 miles maybe over the limit. So, I have concerns. I think there's going to be an increased burden on the police department. I'm cognizant of that, but it's not strong enough that, I wouldn't accept that responsibility. I just have a general concern too, under the law, you're allowed to adopt it on a street-by-street basis or a town-wide basis. And if you opt in on a town-wide basis, then you just have to post on the streets you don't want it to apply to.
Right.
I would just recommend, if adopted, it's done on a town-wide basis, because I think if we did a street-by-street basis, it could be very confusing for motorists.
I think you'd also have to post at the
Entrance.
at the outskirts of town, which we have a lot of when you think
Correct.
about it, because of Quincy, Hyde Park, and Canton, everything that we border and all those streets that go out there. But you got to let somebody know when they're coming in that the fundamental speed limit is 25 miles an hour.
Exactly.
I have, I have kind of the same opinion as you. I've read a little bit, and I can see that clearly dropping it from 30 miles to 25 miles an hour, if the people abide by that speed limit, can save lives. The stopping distance is considerably less. People have obviously a greater chance of surviving if they do get hit at 25 as opposed to 30, or at least sustaining, less of an injury. My concern is, if anybody's tried to drive 25 miles an hour on most of the roads the way we have them designed now, it seems extremely slow. And that's because I think people drive to the condition of the roads. People aren't staring at the speedometers all the time. I mean, I have a heads-up display, so I can see it in my windshield, and I don't even stare at my it just kind of goes away after a while.
Human nature.
And you drive for the condition and the size and the straightness and the smoothness of the road, and you feel comfortable at that speed. So the 25 is going to feel very slow on a lot of our roads, and most people aren't going to do it because they're not going to stare at the speedometer the whole time. And if they are staring at the speedometer, then they're probably a distracted driver because they're not looking where they're going. So that's one of the concerns I have, that if we're going to do this in long range, I think you've got to make the roads such that, because police can't be everywhere, they can't enforce it. 100%, it's impossible. The condition of the roads have to be such that it makes people feel like they should be driving at 25 miles an hour. For example, when you come down Hillside, even though it's a nice smooth road, the road's narrow enough so that when there's two cars passing, you do slow down to 25 because you don't feel comfortable going 30. But if you feel comfortable, you're not going to go 25.
Yeah, I agree completely, and I don't say this trying to shift it off the police. I mean, I think any traffic program has to have enforcement. It's 100% requirement. But I do believe plan and design, engineering, and stuff like that are far more effective because of just what you said. You can't have a police officer everywhere. And the biggest problem is our police officers get the biggest complaints and the most demand at the morning rush hour on weekdays and the afternoon rush hours. You can't staff officers for 2 extra hours. They're either working 8 or none. You know what I mean? So it's a tricky thing because all the complaints and all the requests come in at the exact same time. They come in when people come into work, same on all our issues at the schools, they're all at the same time. So it's a little tricky to, expend your staff throughout the town during those 2 times of the day. Whereas a road design change or engineering, things like that can, have long-term impacts versus short-term enforcement. It is a tricky situation. I think it's a good intended law. I think, putting a bylaw forward, my opinion, I know it's for you to decide, my opinion is, the mechanism would be in place, to make that decision later, you know what I mean, which gives some time at least before the selectmen would ever have to vote on it or something. I support it in that sense. I think there's going to be an expectation, just from the sense I've got talking to people, that the police are going to be able to stop, significantly more people. And, it's true, it'll give us more ability, but we can't be everywhere.
Right.
Chief, what are you hearing from your other chiefs in the greater Boston area?
It's a mixed bag. I mean, Boston adopted it, Somerville, like I said, it's tended to be cities because just many communities haven't had a town meeting. Most have heard a lot from residents requesting it, understandably, and I think we're just a little bit early on our deadline, for a town meeting articles that, they're pretty much studying it, talking about it. They're kind of at the stage we're at. Pretty much anyone I've talked to in their communities has heard a lot of favorable opinions, people looking for it. So I think you'll see it adopted in a lot of communities personally, from what I'm hearing, but I know it's, preliminary, it's early stages.
Any chance that Massachusetts will ever get the camera?
That's really a legislative question, I don't know. There's strong
Some
opinions
states
both
have
ways.
them, but,
They do, yeah. You go to Washington DC, you go certain places. It's really whatever the legislature decides on that. It's a split opinion. People say it's way safer and stuff like that. Other people see that as a city and town just trying to generate revenue.
Yeah, I think it just runs to the fact police can't be everywhere.
Yeah.
Cameras can be, can do a lot of that work, but unfortunately in Massachusetts, you can't enforce it. You can't give a ticket on a camera.
Well, I hear your concerns, Chief. I support the reduction in the speed limit and would definitely like to see this go to town meeting in any event. And
Yeah,
have
no,
town meeting
I
weigh in
would
on it.
too. I would too. Like I said, I have concerns that, I hate to see any law go on the books that can't be enforced or isn't enforced, that's all.
Yeah, well, it sounds like if a lot of communities are going in this direction, then a lot of them will be confronting the same thing, and maybe over time it'll lead to some kind of cultural change if there's enough enforcement throughout the greater community.
I think it would be beneficial if more communities do it, because I
Yes.
think the confusion lies in if you're in Quincy, it's 30, then you come into Milton, it's 25, and then you go into Canton, it's 30. I think actually if more did it, it would be more effective, actually.
Yeah.
Anyone else, any thoughts, questions, or comments? Anything else, Chief?
No, that's all.
Okay. We have warrant articles a little further on, down the
wait,
road, but we
just in
we
case.
wanted to have that preliminary conversation.
Sure.
I don't know that we need you to wait for it. I don't think there's anything else that's police-related on those. You're certainly welcome to stay if you want, Chief, but
I don't think so either, yeah.
Traffic Commission, yeah, I was just going to report on that briefly, but yeah, okay. Why don't we take the firefighter question first, and then we'll go to town
I'll wait,
meeting.
no rush, just in case you have a question. If you don't, that's fine, too.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay, then the next item is a discussion about military compensation, and we have firefighter Kelly and Alan are here. Is anyone else coming in on this page?
No.
No, okay. Good evening.
Good evening. We were,
Evening.
I think we were more here to observe tonight, unless you guys have any questions of us.
Oh, okay.
Do you-
Well, we
I
did
know
rec-
we sent you
We
some
received a
paperwork.
package of information that you gave us, and unfortunately, Mr. Burns is not here tonight. He's out sick, so is not able to join us.
Right, and I haven't had a chance to really talk to Paige or anything about, I did receive and read through that, though, yes. I mean, I think we've discussed it, a little bit. We're inclined to let it go to
Submit the
town meeting.
article to town
yeah.
meeting.
Which I'm fine with.
Okay. We did have a question, which I think was raised by the firefighters union, which was regarding whether the statute would have to be adopted in whole, or if it could be adopted in pieces. And I don't know if we got an answer from town council on that yet. If we did, I haven't seen one, so we probably
neither.
didn't.
Yeah, I haven't seen it from town council.
Okay, so we still need to confirm that.
Okay.
But it looks like, from the communities that you sent us the research on, it looks like, at least on the question of the guard duty, that's the communities that we received, which is quite a number of them, for the first 17 days.
Yeah.
A lot of the communities
Pay
the full amount,
and
and
then
that's
and then drop, if it's longer than that, drop to,
after the 17. And then I guess that's consistent with the, what is it called, USERA?
Sarah.
That's a federal law, right? Okay, so do you have any additional information either of you would like to present to us?
No, not really at this time. We gave you guys the information that we had, and, we just like to see this law get passed in its entirety. So if you guys hear back from town council, that you're gonna go forward with just a part of it, we'd like to try to get it through town hall in its entirety. There's not a whole lot of difference between the 17 paid
subsections,
days
yeah.
and then the subsection, which is we just pay our guys for the first 30 days of a deployment.
And then make up the difference after that.
Yeah, that would be the only real difference between the 17 paid days, which I think everyone is in agreement of is the right thing to do for the guys,
Is the 30, just so we're clear, because I find this very confusing with the different guard
I think I
versus
can
active duty.
answer that.
Is it active duty is 30 days,
30
and
days.
guard is 17 days?
Right, so if a reservist gets called up to go overseas, he'll be deployed for a set amount of time. The first 30 days of that deployment, he'll get his full salary. And after that, the town will just make up the difference between his military salary and his base pay, which usually is not you know, it's like $250, $300 a week, you know, for the town's portion of it, you know?
Right.
It's not a ton of money.
The confusion with the 17 days over the 34 days, that's
Yes.
because the Garden Reserve base their schedules off of the federal fiscal calendar, where towns base their off of the state fiscal calendar, which starts in July, federal starts in October.
Okay.
So if somebody did a 2-week annual tour in August, and then the following June, it's still the same state fiscal year, but a different federal fiscal year.
Okay. So Tom, do you have any questions or
I
comments?
don't. Yeah, I mean, other than, like I said, I'm inclined to certainly let it go to town meeting and, you know, get the article on there. Yeah, and I think you're right, you know, once we hear from town council on what we can do, we'll let you know as soon as possible what we intend to do, I think.
Yes, and we have a meeting January 3rd, which is 2 days before the warrant closes. So we'll probably make our final decisions on the warrant articles that, to the extent we haven't already voted them, because I do want to see if we can vote at least
Yep.
one of them tonight for the master plan. But if we don't vote them tonight, and with Mr. Burns out, we might want to defer some of them anyway
Yep.
until January 3rd and decide whether to submit some of them at that point. But, so we have one more meeting before the warrant closes.
If you guys voted on it tonight so I could sleep at night.
You want us to come back too, right?
My wife would like that.
I did speak with Selectman Burns about a couple of the agenda items tonight. He was in full support of, he was very inclined to get this to town meeting as an
Okay, so
article.
maybe we can vote.
Excuse me.
So the next item is the town meeting articles, and, well, we have the firefighters here and the police chief here. Why don't we take these two and try to combine them? And we have other people coming for other items, but they're not here yet, as far as I can tell. So, so Tom, on this one, it sounds like we're both in agreement, and Mr. Burns is in agreement that this should be submitted to town meeting as
Yeah,
an
so-
article
yeah.
submitted by the Board of Selectmen rather than
Right.
asking
And
citizens to submit.
I'm inclined to say, just do the law, but, I mean, I'll listen to town council, but I'm inclined to, I don't know about you, but to just,
You mean about the entire, all this
yeah,
stuff?
whether to do a piecemeal or,
Yeah, I would be as well. It came up as a question that I know we wanted to get answered last
Mm-hmm.
week, so it wasn't clear whether that was even an option to adopt some versus all of it, but
right.
we just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would agree with you. I would be in favor of submitting this to town meeting as a Board of Selectmen submitted article and adopting the state law in its entirety.
Great.
Okay, and Mr. Burns is in agreement with that, is he?
He was, yeah, he was in-
Clear at the last
yep.
meeting.
Yeah, so that sounds pretty solid.
Okay, so why don't we, do you want to make a motion to submit that article?
Sure, I'll make a motion to submit an article to town meeting relative to military compensation under Mass General Law, Chapter 33, Section 59, to adopt that Mass General Law in its entirety.
Okay, second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Christmas to you.
Thank you. Same to you. Enjoy the holidays. Happy New Year.
Gentleman from Peel's here?
Oh, if he is, okay, that's great, yes.
Who's that?
Why don't we, Mr. Peel Pizza?
Yeah.
Why don't
Oh.
we move up number 11?
Sure.
Chief, if you'll just indulge us for this, I think we'll take just a very short period of time. So we have Mr. Higgins from Peel Pizza? Are you Mr. Higgins?
You're up.
We're gonna move your item up.
All right,
Hopefully not keep you too long.
No, don't be silly.
Good evening.
Good
If you
evening.
Just, for the record, just state your name and your business.
Brendan Higgins, Peel Pizza Company.
Great, thank you for coming in tonight. And you're here applying for a common vic license for a new pizza company taking over
Zach's.
Zach's Pizza.
Correct.
I did have a
yes.
chance to go online and take a look at your menu from your Hingham store, I
Oh,
believe.
great. I actually brought some for you
I
guys.
did as well.
Looks like a great menu.
It does.
Oh, thanks.
My wife's a big fan of white pizzas, and you've got more than I've ever seen, so it's,
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
How about gluten-free?
we do, yes, we do gluten-free as well.
Do you want to tell us maybe a little bit about your business or and your plans for this location?
Well, we opened up in Hingham in 2013, a little over 3.5 years ago, and we do, everything's homemade. We make our own dough in-house, we make our own sauce. Salads, calzones, lasagna, gluten-free. Keep it simple, and we just do everything nice and fresh, and we're not doing any really change to the, like to the actual inside of the building. We're just gonna revamp the dining area and clean the kitchen up, and hopefully be open fairly soon.
Okay. Signage-wise, you're going to keep the same basic signage, other than change the name, but
Yes, yeah,
Just
we're
keep the
we're-
gooseneck
we're gonna put our
lamps
sign up, and the sign company is gonna maybe ask the sign council if we can go, like right up against the actual building, which would be nice. I'd like to, with the, instead of that, that background, but yeah, the sign will be the same as the drawings there, whether it's whatever color the backdrop is, but,
okay.
yeah, same lighting and.
And you have two locations currently, Hingham and Cohasset?
Correct, and we're doing Duxbury right now. Should be open fairly soon.
Oh, great.
Milton will be
Just,
next.
and you've submitted 3 or 4 letters of reference, recommendation here?
Yes.
So this is great. They look good. And how much, if you said that, I'm sorry, I missed it, but how much seating will you have in the restaurant?
The previous operator had, I think, about 14 seats in there. It's not a big dining room, so we're going to have something similar
the
to
same
that. I
amount.
would say 14, 15.
Okay. Well, I'll propose a
I think it looks
motion.
good.
I'll propose a motion to approve a common victual license to Peel Holding LLC, DBA Peel Pizza Company, Milton, located at 538 Adams Street, contingent upon the applicant meeting all requirements set forth by the Board of Health and any other departments requiring such inspections.
And I'll second the motion. Do we have any discussion on it?
No.
If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous.
Congratulations.
All right, Mr. Higgins, thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Happy to have
Appreciate
you
it.
coming to Milton.
Happy to be here.
Good luck.
When will you be opening? Can you give the viewers who are watching any
In
information?
January.
January, great.
Yeah,
Perfect.
won't be too long.
Good.
There's not much to do, which
Wish
is
you
the
lots of
beauty of it.
success. And
Thank you,
Look
appreciate
forward
it.
we look forward to
Wanted to
stopping
come
in
to
and
town for a
trying
long
the pizza.
time. I was very happy the spot came up.
Good.
Great.
Very pleased.
Take care.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're back to town meeting articles, and
Okay. Noise bylaw, I'm going to meet with Joe Prondak tomorrow. We're going to have some discussion on what to do.
okay, great. Traffic Commission, the Master Plan Implementation Committee had a meeting last night, and unfortunately, the person who's our traffic person on the committee was not available to be at the meeting last night, and he and I have not been able to set up a meeting with the town administrator and the police chief yet to talk about the changes. But broadly speaking, the proposal would be to add some residents to the Traffic Commission and maybe revisit this 8-member composition of the commission that's set forth in the bylaw. Some of the titles are even a little bit out of date, so it's been a while since this bylaw has been in place. The Master Plan Implementation Committee was in support last night of adding residents, especially a member of the Bicycle Advisory Committee, to the Traffic Commission. Also suggested, and obviously we'll want to talk with Chief King in particular about his thoughts on this bylaw, about whether the police chief should automatically be the chair of the Traffic Commission, should that possibly be the town engineer, or should the Traffic Commission just elect a chair from time to time as they see fit. So those are just some suggestions that were made. There were others as well, and there was a recommendation that we wind into Section 6 of the current bylaw, that public safety be a focus of the Traffic Commission, and possibly we change the word accidents to crashes. So there were different suggestions like that we want to really kind of sit down and get the chief's thoughts and see what, and perhaps the commission themselves might want to weigh in. But at some point, the Master Plan Implementation Committee might want to take a position formally on whatever we come up with. But that's really the update. So I'm hoping by January 3rd, we'll have a revised draft to circulate for Chapter 6B of the bylaws.
Madam Chair, currently 1 resident in the 8-member board?
No residents currently.
No residents, okay.
No, it's all, it's the chief of the police department, the fire chief, the public works director, the consolidated facilities under an old title, the wire inspector, the police department safety officer, the town planner, and the assistant town engineer. So that's who comprises it currently.
Okay.
Okay, so more to come on that, hopefully on January 3rd. Well, we'll have to be on January 3rd. We also had the revolving fund for consolidated facilities. I don't know if there's any update on that, or I know it's in process.
I know the board, Madam Chair, was supportive of the creation of the revolving fund, so I'm working with John Flynn on just drafting that article for
Okay.
submission.
Okay, on this list, the Chapter 13 bylaw and the office hours.
I haven't connected to see what work the Town Government Study Committee is doing on the Chapter 13 personnel board changes, so I need to follow up with them on that one.
Okay. The Master Plan Implementation Committee's appropriation request. We talked about this briefly at the last meeting. Last night, the Master Plan Implementation Committee voted unanimously to recommend that the Planning Board and the Board of Selectmen submit an article, which was recommended by Ms. Fagan a while back, that we have a standalone article appropriation for the Master Plan Implementation Committee, and we voted to recommend a $50,000 request. There was consideration of a significantly higher amount, which had been suggested by a member of the Planning Board, which would have included possibly looking at hiring a senior-level person. The consensus of the committee was that it was probably a little bit too soon. There was even talk about whether we might want to expand the size of that committee. And we thought that this committee's been in existence for less than a year. We first started meeting last spring. So we think last night the consensus was that it's appropriate to move forward with seeking a standalone appropriation, which we hope would carry forward from warrant to warrant over the next 10 years, while the life of the committee is set for 10 years.
And this would be more to fund studies and plans and that type of thing?
Well, yes, but the amount could vary dramatically in any given year, depending on what the Master Plan Committee is envisioning for its next couple of years, because the current requirement that was adopted by town meeting is that each year the Master Plan Committee has to report to town meeting what it's accomplished in the last year, what it expects to move forward during the next 2 years under the Master Plan, and whatever resources it might need or other actions that might need to be taken. So, and it's also required to report periodically to this board and to the Planning Board. So the idea is that while we're seeking $50,000 for next year, part of that is to fund Phase 2 of the Milton Village project. I know the town administrator might be able to speak more to this, but there's a request going to the MAPC to see if they would help us do some of the work at 88 Wharf, not 88 Wharf area, for the dock study that's been requested by the Friends of the Crew, because there was some concern among planning board members about appropriating $15,000 from the planning board budget for that. So it was separated into phases because we only had potentially $15,000 available this year. So Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the Milton Village, first one being the dock area, the waterfront, the second one being the greater Milton Village area. Mm-hmm. So it included that. It included some other smaller items that the committee is looking at. And it's a projection. It's possible that it could vary a little bit, but it's what the committee would be voting on this on Thursday night. So it would be good if we could take a position on it and then have both boards have voted on it before the January 5th deadline. But it's something that could vary. So it might be by the time we get to year 3 or 4 of the Master Plan Implementation Committee's work, there could be a higher amount that's requested, or maybe in some years a lower amount, just depending on what the committee's seeing at any given time for its work over the next 2 years. So that's an official recommendation from the committee. Everyone thought it was a very good suggestion that the money not be in the selectmen's budget and the planning board's budget, but that it go in a separate standalone article. And that way town meeting gets the option of weighing it, vetting it, and voting on it specifically. And there's no question as to whether, if the funds are used for these purposes, that town meeting is behind it. Mm-hmm. So can we take a vote on submitting this one tonight, so that the planning board will have some idea where we're at when they vote on Thursday, which I think is their last meeting before the warrant deadline closing.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds reasonable to me that the implementation committee should have some kind of a budget and an appropriation, so, yeah. Do you want to form it in the form of a motion that we'll support it, or?
I think so. I think I think the planning board is planning to vote on it based on Cheryl's expectations, so
okay,
we can vote it.
All right, so I'll move that we recommend a warrant article for a appropriation for the Master Plan Implementation Committee.
And I'll second the motion that we submit the article. And what about the $50,000 request? Are you okay with that?
Sure.
So can we do a friendly amendment to that, to also seek $50,000?
Yeah, I'll accept that.
All right, then any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Okay. Good, thank you. So
Military compensation, we already kind of voted that we'd
we did.
do that.
a home rule petition for the liquor license for 2 Adams Street. I know we have a draft, and the town administrator gave us an update on this at the last meeting. I'm not sure if we did see a draft article, I think.
Yeah, one was circulated, yeah. And this is a home rule petition, so it's really not much for us to do on it. I mean,
Just to
other
submit
than
the
the fact that there was a liquor license for that location at one time, but because of the fact that the building, came to a standstill, it just
Yeah,
expired.
This one seems, given the fact that one already existed, this didn't seem too controversial.
No.
So should we submit the home rule petition article?
Sure, yeah, I'd say yes.
So why don't we move that? So I'll move that we submit the home rule petition for liquor license for 2 Adams Street as a warrant article for the May 2017 town meeting.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the speed limit changed from 30 to 25.
I'm in agreement. I mean, like I said, I have concerns over how it's going to be enforced, and if it can't be dramatically enforced, how much good it's going to do. But I think I can certainly see that there is benefit to reducing the speed limit.
Yeah.
So I will make a motion to submit a warrant article reducing the fundamental speed limit from 35 miles an hour to 25 miles an hour townwide unless otherwise posted.
And I'll second that. And I don't know if that's one that you had a chance, Mike, to talk with Dave about.
No, he had a
Okay.
comment about the alcohol tax one that
Okay.
he'd like me to read, yeah.
Okay, so if no other comments, then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we'll submit that one. We have the Capital Improvement Committee bylaw change, which was discussed several meetings ago.
And I think that the capital committee, all they were looking for the most part, there was maybe some other minor wording changes, but for the most part, the increase from the 10 to the 25,000. There are other changes that we know that have to happen in that, and I think to make it consistent with the strong town administrator.
Yeah, there was also a new section that they wanted to add
Yeah.
about promulgating regulations or policies, which we thought, at least part of the discussion was about them recommending them, since they would really have to come here.
Yeah, we're an advisory board, so
So is that not being dropped, or is that,
I'd have to read it again. It's been a while since I read it, so
okay, or maybe the committee could take that part of it up tomorrow.
Yeah.
So at least for the 5-year to 10 years and the 10,000 to 25,000, those
Yeah, mhm.
are the two significant
Yeah,
changes.
mhm.
So I think those seem reasonable. So I'd be in favor of submitting that.
Okay.
So I'll move that we submit the Capital Improvement Planning Committee's draft article with those two changes for the amount, the dollar amount of the capital items and the life of the capital item.
Okay, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Did you want to speak,
Yeah,
Mr.
so
Denny, to the
I-
alcohol tax?
Spoke to Selectman Byrne, as you may recall, in the last Board of Selectmen meeting, he proposed a similar 2% alcohol tax to benefit the Milton Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition. To that was filed by Councilor Linehan in City Council chambers in Boston. That did not pass last Thursday. It was voted down 10-3. Selectman Burns would like to modify this increase to a 1% tax, which he thinks would be better long-term. And
I'd want to hear more about it. I mean, is this a new tax on, well, I mean, either way, it's a home rule petition, I
Correct.
guess.
Yeah.
But, I mean, is it an additional tax on alcohol that the town would levy?
I don't-
that's the way I understand it. It's a
Or
1%.
or is it the state sharing some of its alcohol tax with,
It sounds like the
It's
former.
an
so-
additional, yeah, it's the
Additional, yeah.
former, yeah. And he wanted to modify it from 2%, the 2% increase of the
To
current
1%.
alcohol tax to 1%.
Did you know if either you or David had any conversations with town council about this and what the article would look like?
I don't believe he
Okay.
has. I know I haven't, yeah.
Maybe we should defer this one until January
January
3rd.
third.
Yeah,
And
I'd
see if
like
we
to
can
see it.
either get town council to
Sure.
I guess, draft something so we can take a look at something concrete in front of us.
Yeah, I mean, some like, I mean, the idea of it is laudable. I mean, certainly, to fund Substance Abuse Coalition, is a laudable goal. I would be concerned that we put our local merchants at a competitive disadvantage with neighboring cities and towns that don't have the same tax. And when we've got such a precious small commercial base to begin with, I do have concerns.
Yep, I understand. That's something we should consider. Do we know if any other communities are doing this?
So the first I
Other
heard
than
of was
Boston?
the petition filed by Council Linehan.
Okay, so why don't we get some more information on that one?
Okay.
And we also had Zero's Alvin Avenue as a request from the East Milton Neighborhood Association.
Yeah.
We wanted to get some more information on that, and I don't think we've had any time to really look into that issue.
Right,
Was it DPW we wanted to talk about?
yeah, Joe Lynch, I'm concerned that when we had discussions about whether to try and use that as a building lot, and do some affordable housing down there, all the residents came out, and their major complaint was flooding and water. So to make that all impervious surface, I'd want to make sure we're not making the situation go
Worse.
from bad to worse.
Yeah. Okay, so we should get some more information from Joe Lynch or John Thompson about that.
And there is a major, is it sewer main that goes under there, or water main, or both?
Okay. I thought for some reason there was another article, but,
Marijuana?
well, that one's really a question about whether it would be a ballot question, rather than, so that's not really a warrant article, but that's something that town council's looking at. There was a temporary moratorium, but that's before the planning board. So the ballot question is something that we're looking into for.
Does it need both town meeting and to go on a ballot, or can the selectmen just put it on a ballot? I mean, I guess that would be a
It
question.
doesn't need town meeting, so it's
Oh, it
not a
doesn't.
town meeting article. The
Okay.
only town meeting article is the planning board's moratorium article.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think that's just an error on that list. Okay, and we still may want to consider whether to defer some of these until October, because there's, two budgets, all of these, plus the major planning board articles is going to be a lot for May,
Right,
so.
right. I think the marijuana one should get on May, if we can get it on May. And the only reason I say that is, even though, the dispensaries are ways out, paraphernalia and right now is, you can legally distribute it, you can sell plants.
You're talking about the planning board's temporary
Yeah,
moratorium?
yes, yeah. So I
They'll
thi-
take that up on Thursday night. Or maybe we can communicate that to the planning director to.
There is a budding business starting to, selling,
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Mr. Hurley, I thought you wanted to bring up a new article for stabilization for roadways. Stabilization
That's
article.
true, I did.
Talked about that the other day.
Yeah. My thought was, and this would be in a contingent budget, assuming that there's enough funding there, and so what I'm assuming is that, the amount of the operating override number is small enough that we don't make it such a big number for an override that it won't pass, but to take some of the override money and put it in a special purpose stabilization fund for the purpose of funding or augmenting Chapter 90 money for roadway improvements. Something to the order of, $500,000 or $600,000.
Okay, so, yeah, I guess that would be a separate warrant article, because we need to create a new stabilization
We'll
fund.
create, well, we could create the stabilization fund in any event, but
So the warrant article would be for funding it then?
Well, part of the override dollars would go into it. I mean, so it could be two separate articles, one would be the override. Or I guess we could, contingently fund it with, but establish it regardless if we wanted to.
Okay. I guess, so it sounds like some of it is dependent on where the budget's at.
It really is. I mean, in terms of, whether it's going to do any good or not, yeah. I mean, right now, just as background, every year, Joe Lynch, based upon his roadway plan, says that, for the next 20 years, we need about $3.6 million to just make some headway. That's doing more than just tread water. That's making headway towards our pavement management plan. $3.6 million is not coming out of the operating budget anytime soon. It's not coming out of the capital committee anytime soon. So we need some way to fund it if we're going to fund it. And I think everybody's in agreement that the condition of the roads, we'll lose in the battle.
All right, well, it sounds like we have to defer this one. I don't know whether January 3rd would be enough time in terms of the budget and where the budget will be at. I suppose we could vote to submit it. We can always remove it or recommend not funding it if the budget doesn't really
Well,
allow
what
for
I
it.
recommend is contingent, non-contingent, the way we do with other, so no funding on a non-contingent and funding it on a contingent.
Okay.
But it will result in two articles, one to create the special purpose stabilization fund and then the second article.
You could ask town council, you might be able to do it in the same article. I would think you would be able to, create it and fund it. And you're funding it only
Okay.
contingently.
All right, so why don't we check in on that? We'll take that one back up on January 3rd. Okay. We also have a conference regarding the Max Ullin Skating Rink Lease Committee. Now, this would have been David Burns, but he's out.
Sure.
But I'm sure Mr. Dennehy can give us
Yeah.
a report.
Very productive and robust conversation. I was in attendance. Senator-elect Walter Timothy was there. DCR Commissioner Leo Roy. Two members of Curry's, the anchor tenants team was here. So obviously, as some of the viewers may or may not know, the lease expires April 30th of 2017. It's an extension of what was a 3-year contract that was extended for 2 years, and subsequently we're in the second year of the second 1-year extension. So the discussion was talking, it's been a very good marriage with the town of Milton being the lessee and Curry College being the anchor tenant. DCI is looking to do something a little more long-term. It came out in that meeting that Curry College would like to do something a little more long-term. The two options on the table that were proposed was a 10-year permit from the DCR and a 25-year lease. The 25-year lease would require some legislation. The 10-year permit seemed to be the route that Curry College and the DCR were kind of leaning towards. Milton Youth Hockey was in the room as one of the main users of the ice and the facility. But it was a very productive meeting, just getting the ball rolling towards what could be a 10 or a 25-year lessee anchor tenant between town of Milton and Curry, and obviously the owner of the state asset, DCR.
Yep.
But
I
very
mean,
productive conversation.
Clearly, Curry is not going to fund operating deficits for 10 years or 25 years. That's the reason I wanted to see it into a, what do you call it?
Stabilization fund?
No,
Oh, an enterprise fund.
Enterprise fund.
Enterprise.
Senior moments. So that's my concern is, has there been any discussion at all? We need the ability to set rates. I wouldn't mind seeing DCR involved in that process, but it's got to run at a break even. I mean, otherwise, we're not going to ask the taxpayers to fund it. I wouldn't expect Curry to fund it for 25 years. And if the rates are artificially low, then it's always going to be a problem, unless you can find another revenue source for that thing. So I think that's the issue.
Yeah, with the dwindling amount of non-private ice skating facilities in the state, this is a highly sought-after place to rent
Sure.
and use ice. It's being jockeyed around now as to who gets the hours when, and what time the young kids get to be on the ice and what time do they need to be home studying. And
Right.
so it was preliminary. It was very productive. It was nice having Senator-elect Timilty here. Selectman Burns was here. Everybody had the interest of the asset and the children, and obviously Curry College was their institution. They're going to have 2 hockey teams next year. They're going to have
Yeah,
a women's
boys, yeah,
team.
yeah.
So it was a productive discussion, first of many, I'm sure. I'm glad that we're doing it in December and not in March when this lease runs up. And hopefully we can have, we are going to sit down in the next couple of weeks to iron out some of the inefficiencies that have been identified over the last 7 years to try to come up with a solution. But yeah, I completely understand what you're saying.
So more to come on this.
Yeah,
Okay.
much more to come.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks. Yep.
We're waiting on Mr. Lynch, right, for the MWRA? Okay,
Yeah,
so,
so you can take up 12 if you want.
all right, so why don't we go to the New Year's Eve extended hours?
Okay, I did have a question on this. Are we extending the drinking hours to 1, or are we just extending the hours to be open? It seems to me last year we extended the alcohol to...
Alcohol service.
to- I'm not sure I'm in favor of 1 o'clock for that. It's not what we did last year. We extended they could be open, but I think last call was still midnight, or a champagne toast at midnight or something like that. I don't believe we extended the alcohol hours to 1 o'clock last time. Right now, the last call is 11 at Navarra.
I don't recall what we did last year, whether it was just a last drink at midnight or,
That's what I thought it was.
okay, you may be right, was that what it was?
I'm not in favor of this.
Well, so this is, let's just look at the letters, so,
Well, this is what they're requesting, you, the board, can come back.
I'll move to, they can stay open till 1 with last call at 12.
yeah, it looks like Steel and Rye was requesting service of normal alcohol service hours until 1. Abbey Park, though, just allowed to stay open until 1. Novara, stay open until 1. So it looks like they've asked for some inconsistent,
Yeah,
the requests are inconsistent, but did you make a motion?
I'll make it. I'll propose a motion to approve a request for Abbey Park at 555 Adams Street, Navarra at 556 Adams Street, Steel and Wright, 95 Elliott Street, to extend hours of operation from 12 a.m. to 1 a.m. and last call for alcohol to 12 a.m.
On December 31st?
On December 31st,
2016?
16, yes.
I'll second the motion. Okay, any further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we now have entertainment license renewals.
Okay, I'll propose a motion to approve the following 2007 entertainment license renewals. Milton's Opus LLC, DBA Steel and Rye, 95 Elliott Street. 556 Adams Street, LLC, DBA Navarra. 556 Adams Street. Welsh Restaurant Management, LLC, DBA Abbey Park. 550 Adams Street. And Wharf Street Restaurant Group, DBA 88 Wharf, 88 Wharf Street.
I'll second the motion. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we have a discussion of conditions of liquor license on our agenda, and our licensing agent, Barbara Martin, gave us a draft to propose conditions.
Yep.
I think the most significant change was to eliminate the requirement that the 25% ratio of food to service, so how?
Yeah.
Food to alcohol sales, which is apparent, from what I understand from talking with Barbara and with the town administrator, is not common in other communities.
Apparently not. So there are two problems. Number one is that, and number one, it was an arbitrary percentage when proposed years back. And because of, the three big restaurants, Abbey, Navarra, serve expensive wine, and, the ratio is out of whack. I mean, there's no way that they can maintain that kind of ratio.
So it's been dropped from this draft, so because we're making that change, and this would get attached to the licenses, we will need to take a vote on that. And I believe, let me just find the note, I believe that what was put in was some language relating to training employees in section 9.
Yeah, some training and some follow-up inspection language in one of these. Maybe that was in the same.
Yes, it's all section 9.
Yeah, that's all in section 9.
There were a couple of places where I sent over some comments to the licensing agent today. She had raised a question about whether, basically, do we want to have a designee of the board possibly be included among the people who might monitor the compliance? So I thought there were a few places where we might want to say, or its designee, where there are references to the board or to the town administrator.
Yeah, I would highly suggest it.
Okay, and then I think the only other comment was section 11, which indicated that no more than one license may be exercised on the same.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
No, not that one, I'm sorry, number 10. No individual, partnership, corporation, or LLC shall be issued more than one liquor license. The same principal is the license holder, is the principal of the license holder, although it wasn't clear. Barbara did tell me that Vance Welch's name is actually on the licenses, and I thought it was in the name of the entity, but it may be a DBA. So
a corporation can hold a liquor license. An LLC can hold a liquor license. The requirements are that all of the members of the board or all of the members of the LLC have to be United States citizens, and the majority of them have to be Massachusetts residents. But
Yeah,
I don't know how our licenses are issued.
Well, so I thought we could leave that if it really was just separate corporate entities, but she indicated that the name of the individual who's the principal was on them. So it probably makes sense to delete section 10, given the fact that we have two restaurants under common, or at least partially common ownership.
Right, and I'm not sure, why it's a problem. I mean, why you'd want I could see why you'd want to.
You mean why the language is in there initially?
Yeah, why you want to restrict it to just one.
I don't know, it's been carried over from year to year, so I'm not sure when it was put in or what the reason was, but it seems that it's no longer applicable, at least
Yeah.
in one circumstance. So do we have any other comments or questions on these proposed conditions?
There was only one other one here, I'm trying to find it again, on,
Was it management supervision?
no, it wasn't, it was consumption only in the restaurant. It was one of these. Happy hours. Shall we sold,
Section 5?
I think it's 5, yeah. No alcohol shall be sold, delivered, or otherwise permitted with takeout, that's fine. Shall be sold, no alcohol beverage shall be sold or served from the premises to be consumed off premises. My concern is, my concern with that one is, are we, people that want to take their half-finished bottle of wine home with them, which the law permits, would that be in conflict with that? No alcoholic beverage shall be sold or served from the premises to be consumed off premises. Clearly, if you take your bottle of wine home with you, you're going to consume it off premises.
Okay, well, maybe we can check what the common practice might, how that's handled in
Yeah, I mean.
in this and other communities. Maybe there's something town council or someone else may have a suggestion to clarify
Yeah.
that.
I mean, I know right now, you can go to any one of those restaurants and take your bottle of wine home, they seal it, and, you know,
Okay.
they comply with the, Massachusetts laws on it, but,
Okay, well then why don't we get clarification on that, and that sounds like that's a pretty minor change.
Yeah, I would think so.
The substance of it is fine with me. So, given that, and the minor typos and the designee language I suggested, are we otherwise good with the conditions?
yes.
Okay, so why don't we, do you want to propose a motion to approve this proposed conditions for liquor licenses as amended?
Yeah, let me get there. We don't have a motion yet. So, yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the conditions for liquor licenses. I don't even know how to
As
say it.
amended?
As amended, per our previous discussion.
I'll second the motion. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, on to number 15, and DPW Director Joe Lynch is here, so we'll move right on to that next. Good
Hey, Joe.
evening, Joe.
Good, thank you, how you doing?
Joe, as long as we have you here, because it is on our agenda, and maybe you can answer the question quickly. If you can't, then you can come back to us with an answer. But there is the East Milton Neighborhood Association has requested that we put, 0 Alvin Ave, they would like to pave it over and use it as a parking lot. I was very concerned about that, only in that our discussion with the flooding and...
For housing, that's when we talked about a couple of years ago?
Yes, and all the neighbors down there were concerned that there was significant water problems down there and flooding of basements, that my concern would be putting impervious surface on there would make that situation worse. I just wanted to get your opinion on it, or,
Boy, so on recollection, I remember looking at it in pretty great detail. We have at least a sewer main, and I believe it's a sewer main and a major trunk drainage line that
Yeah,
runs through there.
there is.
And both of the engineering documents that we have on record that show those lines show that on a pile-supported structure because of the presence of peat. So not only do you have a question of flooding and impervious surface contributing to runoff with no place to store the water, what you really have is a structural question of any weight you
is
put
that
on.
parking lot going to sink into the ground?
Any weight you put on peat is what's called a surcharge load. It pushes down and typically mounds up, so those other houses adjacent that aren't even properly, if they're not properly founded on pilings, you could actually displace foundation. So I would say it would take a lot of engineering reconnaissance, geotechnical work to determine the extent of peat before you would do anything down there.
Okay.
Again, 18 months ago, we had that conversation.
yeah.
I remember that's the result.
Okay, that's good information, thank you. So we're meeting with you tonight, Joe, to talk about the Blue Hills ski area and some discussions with the DCR and the MWRA. And probably you and Mr. Dennehy are in the best position to give us an update on this and start us off.
So this is all part of an integral plan that the DCR has to address the viability of any operator of the ski area. What they have recognized is with the constant rollover of operators over the years, decades, I dare say, that they need someone who's able to put an investment into the area. And to get an investment, they need a long-term agreement. And to have a long-term agreement, they need to formulate a business plan. So one of the unique factors, aspects of the ski area, of any ski area for that matter, but particularly the Blue Hill ski area, is the number one component of attracting, making money is attracting people to the area. And to attract them, you need their product is skiing. They don't make money on skiing. They make money on concessions, they make it on food, they make it on rentals, they make it on lessons. That's where they make their money. But if you can't get the people there because you don't have snow, you have nothing. So the challenge has always been making snow. Climatically, we live where we live, that's bad enough. Moreover, is when we have weather like we had last week at 2 degrees for long periods of time, their pressures have been, and I don't mean water pressures, their pressures have been the affordability of putting drinking water on their slopes, which is their only source of water. So, over the years, they have been a Canton water customer. And I say that because that, if you all remember, those circumstances have changed twice now in the past 5 years. Once was a renegotiated contract on an interim basis to allow us to get some capital work done in order for us to be self-sufficient and to wean them off of our system, which we just completed this past year. So recognizing that Canton was out of the mix, the DCR embarked upon a mission. Canton couldn't supply them with water. They just physically were unable to. So DCR embarked upon a mission to build a new pump house, make an investment in that facility, put a new pump house in, extend that water feed from Milton to that new pump house, and they would become our customer. In doing that, they also, not suspiciously, quite wide open for the past 2 years, have been talking about, when we do that, we would like Milton to sell us water at a discount, simply put. And what they've envisioned is sell them water at an equivalent rate of what the MWRA charges us on a wholesale basis, plus 10%, which over the past 3.5, 4 years was what the agreement with Canton was, in fact, was exactly that.
Right.
Prior to that renegotiated agreement, for 54 years, Milton was charging Canton our retail rate for water. So that's the background history on it. So financial viability is critical. The sale of water is pivotal in that critical decision, and they are asking and have crafted an agreement in a very raw draft format, by the way, an agreement where they look to secure purchasing water at that wholesale rate directly from the MWRA, and that Milton would bill them only that 10% above that wholesale cost directly. I say the agreement's crafted. It's crafted in a tripartite structure: Milton, DCR, and the MWRA. So we met, Town Council and I met and learned of this about 2.5 weeks ago. We then met in this room, and it also included Commissioner Roy in a teleconference to clarify how did they envision this, because we weren't really sure what was being proposed. Based on that conversation, John Flynn went off and was going to confer with the chief counsels for both of those agencies, and I was going to confer with the MWRA operations folks with regards to, how do we do this? Quite peculiar. So we've done that. I reached out to the MWRA 2 weeks ago, spoke with their operations director, a Milton resident, Michael Hornbrook. Michael we had a great conversation, high altitude, he understood. He was involved in early conversations. He knew that this was coming. This was not a thing that was unknown to him. He felt that we could put in place, once we talked to their accounting people, if you will, how it is we could put it in place. And I did. I followed up with the people who do our assessments and reporting on a monthly basis and give us our assessment on an annual basis. And the structure is pretty straightforward. Milton has 3 meters at the MWRA, one of which serves this area. All of the water that serves not just the ski area, but the entire high service area, those areas where the tanks are and those high pressure areas, all come through 1 meter. So it's all the houses and everything, not just the ski area. But we do have a meter right at the feed to the ski area. It's an accurate meter. It's mag meter is the term for it, meaning it uses a magnetic field. It's very accurate over a long period of time at widely fluctuating flow rates. So it's the right type of thing, which is very important because accuracy on large consumptions could make or break your billing. So we have the right meter, and the MWRA agrees we have the right meter. So they are not in the meter reading business. They're not in the individual client business. They bill cities and towns. However, the structure of this, because Leo Roy, the DCR, has taken the position that the water itself is theirs, as the MWRA is a spin-off from the MDC for 110 years, that the water in that watershed is theirs, and they feel and have convinced the MWRA that, yeah, there's some credibility to that, we don't want to fight that, we are willing to play along with this. So allowed us to hammer out a detail. The detail is, we will read the mag meter once per quarter, like every other household in town here, and we'll take that reading and we'll do two things with it. We will share it with the MWRA, which we'll talk about in a minute, and we will use that consumption to generate, on what we know to be the annual wholesale cost, we will generate the 10% upcharge, and we will bill the entity. Yet to be defined. I think DCR would prefer we bill the ski area operator. I believe, and we can talk about this in more detail later, I believe we should bill the DCR, and how it is they handle utilities, let them figure that out as a landlord tenant. I believe DCR is the entity we should bill. The reading that goes to the MWRA, several things have to happen. One is, they have to deduct, first of all, they have to generate a bill on that exact quantity on the assessment wholesale basis and issue a bill to the entity. I assume it's going to also be DCR. They have to collect it, and they have to manage that process. The same token, they have to take that quantity that's measured, and they have to deduct it from that 1 meter, meter 55, which is our meter. And the reason why they have to do that is because the flow that we're selling at a discount, we shouldn't be penalized, especially if they're going to be greatly increasing the volume of water, therefore the amount of snow they're going to make, which is the goal here. We don't want to be penalized by an artificially increased flow, which affects our flow share, which affects our future assessments in years to come. So it's doable. It's a leap of faith, because it relies on a manual process, a manual protocol established that gets carried on for the term of the contract. And Katie caught this earlier today when I spoke with her to brief her on this, is I think they envision this as a extremely long-term, yet to be defined contract, because the mission is in fact to secure a long-term operator, somebody 20, 25 years. We may want to have a provision put in this, we'll talk to John Flynn about that. We may want to put a provision in this that this is a 1-year visitation, 3-year visitation, 5-year visitation, and then decide on a longer term after that, just to see how it's working for everybody, all concerned. So the leap of faith is that the MWRA is actually properly adjusting and accurately adjusting our flow share, so we're not penalized. And then that's a financial assessment issue. And then beyond that, on an operational assessment, operational perspective, is we have to account for all of the water that in fact enters our system and is lost through the system as a way of measuring and metering lost water through firefighting and street sweeping and forest fires and things of that sort. So it's a statistical quirk that we have to kind of iron out, that they have to report the flow for that purpose, but they have to deduct that flow for the purposes of assessment. So, it puts a lot of faith in folks at the MWRA doing both of those on a monthly basis forevermore. It's doable. It's absolutely doable. The concern of increased assessments because of increased water, I believe, has been ameliorated through this approach with the MWRA being willing to deduct flow share. So that's pretty much it on our end of it, as far as actually carrying it out. John Flynn, on the other hand, is going to probably, he and each of their council are going to have a lot of language to hammer out. I was involved in earlier conversations. I'll say it again. I heard things from the selectmen, of things that were important to the selectmen. You folks know what those things are that are important. They were offered informally through DCR representatives. They were offered informally and maybe even quasi-formally in the form of a letter from the current ski area operator. And those were certain benefits to the community. And you people have to iron out whether that's important in this agreement or not. Because that does complicate, it could potentially complicate whether this is an agreement between 3 parties, or is this in fact an agreement between 4 parties and getting any future operator rolled into the mix.
Okay, my first question, Joe, is in terms of forgetting about the fact that you know, the operation of any ski area there is tenuous at best because of the conditions and the fact that it's not a big mountain, it's a small hill. But that aside, it does get a lot of use. My concern originally was if we assume that they're going to be there long-term and it's viable, if we were selling them our water, initially, we'd see a windfall because that's water that won't hit our rates for another 18 months. So if we plan for it, you know, even selling it at 10% above cost, we would have a windfall in those initial 18 months before just because of the way that.
Right, so for the folks at home, Tom, is that our assessment from the MWA on water is based on a 3-year average of the 3 prior calendar years. So next week, the MWRA will be crunching numbers for calendar year 16, 15, and 14. And in the process of doing that, comparing a bunch of complicated equations, community size, loss of water, and come up with a flow share. So that would, to put it in perspective, is the water that they're moving in January of this year, and we're collecting money on in March, and in June, and in September, we're collecting that money, and we won't see that assessment. We'll feel a little hit next year's assessment, representing 6 months. The following year, we'll feel
A little more.
effect, because it'll be 18 months.
Right.
And then the
By
last
the
year.
3 year
And after that,
point.
it'll level off.
Right, exactly. So in those 18 months to 2 years leading up to that, you actually make a little bit of money. I mean, you got to be careful because you fall off the cliff at some point in time. If you give that back to the ratepayers, the residential ratepayers, then you hit the 3-year point, and all of a sudden, everything goes back up through the roof. So certainly you don't want to do that, but there would be a way to build a bank of money if it were flowing through our meter and we were billing it. So, the bigger concern was, and my concern was, okay, we do that, everything looks great, and now we're 4 years or 5 years down the road, and all of a sudden, Blue Hill Ski Area just goes bust, and they can't find anybody else to.
The opposite effect will be true.
Exactly.
The opposite effect, because it'll take 3 years to recover while we're still receiving
Right, and
assessments. for those
and our
3 years.
residents will be paying through the nose for water for 3 years.
So
that was a concern, but I guess this agreement, and I think Anne Marie mentioned it, because it didn't dawn on me originally, was we're having Canton come off. So we're having that kind of effect now
already.
of losing a big water customer. So we're losing a big water customer. We're not getting a chance to put the big water customer back on our books. This deal's screwing us.
Tom, it's a great analogy, but it sounds more dramatic than it actually is. Yes, we're losing Canton, a big customer.
Yep.
But Canton's two biggest customers were Meditech and the ski area. So in essence, the fact that we've got the ski area back, we've really cut.
But we're not making anything off of it because DCR's got, other than 10%.
Which is what we've been making for the past 3
Right,
years anyway.
but we're not getting to, we're gonna see that bubble, the draw. I mean, our ratepayers are gonna get hit for the next 2 years because of that effect of falling off the.
If we didn't have what's now being proposed by the DCR and the MWRA as a way to back out flow share, it would be even more dramatic, because in essence, our increased flow share, our increased assessment, all of that burden would be borne across the board.
Yeah, you're
All
right.
of our
Yeah.
ratepayers.
Mhm.
And we'd be
Yeah.
subsidizing the ski area.
Yeah.
By
Yeah.
backing flow share out, it makes that issue go away.
Saying that our bill is what our bill is, and we're gonna get to reduce it by whatever they use going through that meter. Okay, that's a point well taken.
To their credit, they heard what our concern was, and they went back and tried to find a solution to it.
Yep.
And this is what they've come up with. They're justified in their own mind that that it makes sense legally, and there's even maybe some precedent for it.
Yep.
And so they're happy with that. I don't want to monkey with that.
Yep.
And it does in fact address what our biggest concern was, is that our flow share would continue to increase year after year, and that all of our ratepayers, even, elderly people on a fixed income, would be somehow subsidizing it through their own water bills.
Yep.
And that's been taken off the table by this structure.
Yeah, okay. All right, I hear what you're saying. Okay.
I think the only point that wasn't mentioned, and Joe did a very good job of talking about the discussions that have taken place, is that this doesn't include the ball fields, this doesn't include the soccer fields
Right,
out back.
just the
This
ski
is
area.
strictly the ski area. And we were up there today, and they were making snow.
So if you were to go ahead and do something like this, Jody, your point about the leap of faith, and it's a manual adjustment, it would have to be done for the long term into the future. We probably should talk with town council. We haven't seen the draft yet. He's working on a draft. But, so maybe there's something built in that would give some protection. We don't know. But if not, maybe we'd want to consider putting in something even along the lines of the MWRA having to deliver an officer certificate to us stating that they've actually done that. They've deducted it from the flow share, so that we're kind of putting the onus on them to do some due diligence on their own, make sure it's happening internally, and having a senior level officer of the MWRA certify that it's happening. There might be other protections we can think of, or that John might be negotiating, but, so I think we ought to try to address that somehow in the agreement.
Yep.
The town has to put in some type of a check and balance to make sure that that is actually happening.
So what we receive now is is monthly, just today, in fact. Monthly, we get our prior month's consumption reports in what the impact was for flow share during that period as compared to last, what the impact has been on a 3-year assessment average. And it's a bunch of statistics that allow us to project and see where we are, and then use it to offset, to measure our performance on revenue side. So we get that monthly. I would say that, the structure of the conversation I'll have with John Flynn is that along with that monthly assessment via email, that we also get a calculation summary sheet of how that adjustment was made to document it.
Okay, yep, that sounds right. And obviously, this would be, we wouldn't want this to set precedent elsewhere. The Blue Hill Ski Area is in a unique situation of being a business that we know in the past has struggled to really be able to produce snow and to sustain itself as a business. And as you mentioned, Tom, whether it can do it going well into the future, who knows? On the other hand, it's a great winter recreational resource for the community, not only Milton, but for other communities. And if there's some other benefits that might possibly be negotiated, or, at least it does provide recreational activities for primarily young people, but also adults and members of the community. And
Yep.
there may be exceptions based on the benefits it provides to the community that we want to consider and possibly entering into this type of an arrangement.
And the current operator had some visions of making it a year-round facility as well. Put some other attractions up there for spring and summertime, so, which would be nice.
As far as guidance, back to Councilor Flynn, is I think we need to stay away from a fourth party in the agreement. It only is going to complicate it. I think whatever it is that was on the table, I have them in writing, was on the table in discussion as far as those host community benefits, that I think we should expect we're going to get something similar to that, and that simply on DCR's RFP process, that these provisions be required within their RFP, and that it be incumbent upon the operator to meet all those provisions. And that just leaves that fourth party out of it.
Yep.
And I think it's worth noting that a year or two ago, I can't even remember when it was now, but there were a number of residents of the town.
August 17th of 15.
Is when we start, yeah.
Or is that when there were residents of the town who, I know, emailed us indicating that they had heard the Blue Hill Ski Area was trying to work out some kind of an arrangement to pay for water to make snow, and at the time they were under Canton, being serviced by Canton. But there were a number of residents who wrote to us asking, is there anything the board can do? And it really, nothing has really percolated up to us before now. Joe, you've had some on and off discussions over time with the DCR and the, I don't know, MWI directly, but at least with DCR, to see if there's anything that can be done here to try to keep this recreational resource is a viable,
DCR has been
ongoing.
steadfast in this question. They have 3 separate commissioners have kind of latched onto this question and tried to advance it forward, you know. So this is not coming out of the blue, out of left field. This is consistent with what they've been asking for a couple of years now.
And there was a group, part of the Friends of Blue Hills, that were, along with Denny Swenson, that were trying to advocate for this plan.
That's right, that's right. That was a long time ago, though.
It was a while ago. You know, and we had some preliminary discussions. I mean, there's a couple of things that they want to see happen up there and that would be beneficial to the town. Number one, the location of the ski chalet right now is a horrible location because it's virtually right at the bottom of the hill. People actually ski into it. You know, to move that, they'd love to move that building, and if that building will move to Milton, you know, the town would see some increased meal tax revenue from it. And to, you know, do some kind of an agreement for employment of Milton youth. And that's kind of the benefits we were looking for.
If you don't have it, I have the 2 letters that we received from the operator of the Blue Hills that not so much promised, but offered these types of
Right.
things. If you'd like to see them again, so I can give Mr. Flynn some guidance of whether these are things that we want to include in it or not.
Absolutely.
You probably have these, but
And, you know, the Blue Hill Ski Area is something that we cite whenever we talk about the great characteristics of the town. It's one of the
Certainly
key factors, that people like to hike in the Blue Hills, and in the winter, there are a lot of residents of Milton who do use it as a winter recreational activity, so let's see if we can move it further along, and if there's something that can be done here to try to preserve.
in Commissioner Roy's words, it's time is of the essence. He wants this done 2 months ago. So we'll work
Well,
diligently.
it sounds like it's with the lawyers right now, and I know that doesn't mean it's going to move very quickly, so it's probably going to move a little bit more slowly
that
than
tongue in
Commissioner
cheek.
Roy might like, but,
We're working diligently, we're being tenacious, but in the same token, it takes time.
yes. All right, so we'll probably have this back on a future agenda.
Yep.
It sounds like we've covered everything on it, unless anyone has anything to add.
I don't.
Okay. Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Joe.
Joe.
Mike, those were my original copies.
Yep.
If, you said you had those, right? Okay, okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
It's part of the package, yeah.
Good night.
Good night. All right, we have boards and committee appointments, 3 different committees. We have the Airplane Noise Advisory Committee, and Christopher, I think his name is Zane, I hope I'm not mispronouncing it, has
Okay.
applied to be a member of this committee. He lives over on the, under the 4L section of town rather than 4R, and I think he'd add some balance to the committee, and Andy Schmidt, who's the chair of the committee, is interested in having Chris join the group. He's got some good background that lends itself to research, and that would be of some help to the committee.
All right, I'll move to appoint Christopher Zane of 62 Avalon Road to the Airplane Noise Advisory Committee to serve through July 2017.
And I'll second the motion. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Historical Commission and Town Government Study Committee. Historical Commission, we have, as I understand it, we have 1 opening, and there are 7, I thought there were 9 members on this committee, but it looks like it's 7. We had several well-qualified people in town apply. The Historical Commission has reviewed the resumes and has recommended one of the candidates to us. Let's see, they're recommending William Mullen. We have some other candidates, as I said, with some great experience that I think would really be would really bring something to this commission. And
Yeah, they certainly are all qualified candidates.
so obviously, it's up to us to decide who we'd like to appoint. We do tend to give some deference to really some weight to what the committee itself might recommend. So, Tom, do you have a preference on what you'd like to do here?
I'd like to, if we could put it off to the next meeting, just to...
Okay, I'm fine with that. Defer it. So let's defer the Historical Commission. That'll give Mr. Burns a chance to weigh in as well. All right, we also have the Town Government Study Committee. We have 4, as we all know, we have 4 appointees on this committee, and their terms are up. All of them have served, 3 of them have served, I think, right from the beginning. Ms. Fagan and I were on this committee many years ago, and they have 3 more years to go. They were extended at a town meeting recently. So some of them have served for a very long time. We have had some interest from time to time, and to be honest, occasionally I thought this is a committee where we might need to bring some new blood onto this committee, but it's also a very hard-working committee, and people who are very dedicated to it.
Okay, so I'll move to reappoint Phil Matthews, 154 Reedsdale Road, John Cronin, 130 Wendell Park, Leroy Walker, 452 Truman Parkway, Richard Neely, 23 Russell Street, to the Town Government Study Committee to serve through November 2017.
All right, I'll second the motion. I do want to see if we might want to revisit this one next year, and because there, as I said, there has been some interest by some other residents of the town, and the moderator has one person who has stepped down, so he has one new appointee, so there'll at least be some turnover.
Yeah.
This committee had some turnover after about 2 years, and then hasn't had very much since
Settled in,
then.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'll second the motion, and any other discussion?
No?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Town administrators report.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. Obviously, getting my feet wet every day. Very impressed with the strong auditing report I heard today from Dick Sullivan's group. Kudos to all the teams, Amy's team and town accountants, treasurer's team, obviously town administrator, all the departments. That's a very quality report, and it's nice to walk into something like that, and triple bond rating, and it's nice
Yeah,
to
it
be.
really is.
It is. It's very good news. Continue to meet people on my introduction tour. I spent some time with the cemetery trustees this week at their meeting, actually last week. Met with the warrant committee. I was introduced to them on Monday. Madam Chair brought me to meet the Master Plan Implementation Committee last night, and I met with the Personnel Board. Paige Eppolito brought me down there to see them. So
Great.
continuing to meet new people in the town, and I continue to say, just when you think you know everything in the town, you meet new people, and I can't thank those people and their volunteering efforts. It's a breath of fresh air to see those people so dedicated. This morning I did take a ride out past the ski area. I met my counterpart in Canton. We had a quick cup of coffee at the Dunkin' Donuts there to talk about some coordination, maybe some redundancies, and possibly sharing some resources if we can. So it was just an opening dialogue. He had been the town manager in Millis for about 20 years.
Okay.
Just took over Canton a couple of months before I started here. So he's also getting his feet wet, so it's nice time to introduce myself to him and see if we have some commonalities.
Yeah, Canton is one of those, from time to time, we've tried to do regional things with them, and so far nothing's really come to fruition out of it, but I'd love to see something.
Yeah, there must be some redundancies or some way we can share resources, veteran services with Randolph, maybe a conservation agent with someone, or something to that effect. So just kind of split the cost, and might not be a 40-hour-a-week job for our town, but we could split the resources.
Yeah.
It was a nice cup of coffee. Knee-deep in the budget with outgoing town administrator, Anne Marie Fagan and Amy Dexter, so that's coming along. Another 3 or 4 hour session to go tomorrow to get ourselves ready for next week. It's coming soon, so as Madam Chair, you said, it's going to be a very busy season with both the contingent and non-contingent budgets, and all the articles coming through town meeting. So I want to thank Amy and Emery again. I also like to thank the DPW crew. A storm that was supposed to be 1 to 3 inches on a very busy Saturday morning with people running around trying to get some errands done.
More like 5 to 6.
Turned into a plowable event. So stopped down there early in the morning, say hello, touch the wall, and they fought through. They started around 3 in the morning and probably didn't finish up till around 8 at night when the temperatures dipped back down underneath freezing. So
I was just amazed when I woke up the next morning, it was all gone.
all gone. Yeah. In between it refroze, but in the meantime, it was fun. But very mindful of people's accrued time this time of year. Taking that into account, I have my first department heads meeting on January 9th. I look forward to it. Mary Ann Sullivan was very cordial in allowing us to use the Council on Aging facility. So I've met all the department heads. Just want to let them know, what my plan is, and learn a little bit more about what they do. Obviously, people like Bill Ritchie that you heard tonight, and Chief King, they run a very, very efficient operation, and so it's a give and take. I'll learn from them and hopefully pass on some of the stuff I've learned to them. So
Great.
That's set for January 9th. First MMA meeting for myself, the annual meeting and trade show is on January 20th.
Yep.
We can share some more information. I know we're anxiously looking for some revenue reports from the state, so that stuff should be coming out around that time. We can get a better handle on what's coming into the town. And that's about it, really. Just, again, just moving around the town, getting a little more comfortable with my surroundings, and just working mainly on the budget to try to make sure that we continue with that strong financial report that I heard tonight. So.
Sounds good.
That sounds good. I don't really have anything to report, but I did want to just acknowledge that I think you're off to a great start, and I've been very impressed with what I've seen and with the new town administrator. You're meeting an awful lot of people. You're going to so many night meetings already, and it's not even March before the warrant committee, and things are going very well. So
Thank you.
congratulations on all the efforts, the outreach and everything you've done so far, and all the people you've met and all the different volunteers and boards and committees that you've met. I think things are going well with the transition, which is a good thing. And it's a busy time of year. As you said, a lot of people using some accrued time at the end of the year so they don't lose it. And it's just an overall busy time. And you've probably been at 3 or 4 night meetings a week. So it's been a great start.
Yeah, and from all appearances, based upon initial passes, from what I've heard about the budget, it may well be an override year this year. It seems like the balanced budget may be a very painful event, if we do it, if we have to do it. So that's just going to put all that much more, if you've never seen an override year and just everything that goes on, it's frantic.
Well, and it's growing off of last year's discussion, which really, last year was supposed to be the override year, and because of stormwater,
and a few other
being
things
handled
that fell
separately,
in place.
and some state revenues increasing a little bit, enough that it prevented us from having to have staff layoffs in the non-contingent budget. We were able to kind of come into this year knowing we were going to be submitting the 2 budgets, and we had that discussion a few months ago and said we'd support an override budget going to the voters, assuming town meeting passes it. So, yeah, I think it's the non-contingent budget is looking like it's going to be pretty tough.
Yeah, it could be a very dismal budget, I think, from what I'm hearing anyways.
And on that note, we're trying to see if we can target, because the statute requires that the town administrator present the budget to both the Board of Selectmen and the warrant committee. And I know the warrant committee's raring to get going on this in January, but so we want to accommodate the transition and the fact that 2 budgets to begin with is a difficult thing, never mind having a transition on top of it. So we were tentatively targeting January 10th for discussion of the budget. January 3rd, we've got the medical marijuana back on and some other things. But possibly January 10th for a budget discussion and a presentation of what it's being put together now. And then at some point shortly thereafter to the warrant committee. That has to be scheduled with the warrant committee.
Yeah.
Okay, any other reports tonight?
I don't really have any report other than, I went to a wonderful Christmas party for the town the other night.
Yes,
and
that was very nice.
very well attended, and had a nice time, even though we were out of Milton and Quincy, but at the Elks Hall, but everybody had a great time.
Yes, well run by the town clerk's office.
Yes.
They do a nice job. Citizen speak response. We didn't have anyone tonight. Future agenda items, I know we already have a lot on the agendas and a few that we've talked about. Anything else that we need to add?
No, I don't think so, yeah. But we mentioned, there's just a lot of stuff that we haven't gotten to yet, but.
It's on the
I don't think
list,
anything
though.
new, yeah.
Okay, then we will adjourn the Board of Selectmen's meeting. And we have a meeting of the trustees of the Governor Stoughton Fund next, and the only item we're going to have is an executive session. So we'll call to order, and before we move into executive session, just to wish all of the viewers who are watching a happy holiday season,
Happy
Merry
holidays.
Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year, and we'll be back on January 3rd for
Exactly.
medical marijuana and some other interesting things.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll move that we enter into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to real property, the town farmland, believing that having such discussion in open session would have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the trustees, and to return to open session for the purpose of adjourning.
I'll second.
Mr. Hurley?
Yes.
And me, yes. So we are now in executive session.